Good morning everybody, it's Brett here, Lionheart84. It's the 7th of June, it's the first Sunday in June, obviously being the 7th. I like to do my monthly garden tours in the summer on the first Sunday of each month, but obviously this is quite late to be doing the first tour because of the particular date this Sunday falls on. As you probably know if you watch my videos, especially the garden ones, I have two kind of sections to my garden, or my growing interests if you like. I've got my my tropical fruit collection, which sits here on the deck in winter, and I'm going to feature that in a video a little bit later today after I made this one. And then I've got the rest of my garden, which comprises of mostly rare and unusual, or fairly unusual and slightly exotic flowering plants, and of course my collection of sort of flowering plants, and my collection of fruiting plants, which most of which are quite unusual and exotic, and two or three which are slightly more mundane. So we're going to start our monthly tour now, and I will start with my large pomegranate, and we'll go around the garden in a clockwise direction. This is an unnamed one. I bought it some time ago from a lady on eBay who was moving house and didn't have any room for the tree in the pot at her new garden because she was moving to a much smaller place. It's quite a decent size, as you can see. It's if you include the height of the pot, it's probably between 7 and 8 feet tall and about 6 feet wide. Now, it's since I bought it a year or two back, it's never had flowers on it. It's already had several flower buds this year, but unfortunately they seem to keep falling off just before they get to opening size, and I haven't yet figured out if that's a problem with a watering issue. I haven't been watering it evenly enough, or if there's some new. It was repotted in this large container and had fresh compost in it, so I don't think it's a lack of nutrients, but I've been trying potash on it and various other light feed to see if I can get it to flower. It has got flower buds on it. Let's see if we can lift up and have a look at that one. Hopefully you can see that. But that's the size they get to before they drop off, so I don't know what's going to happen. I won't take too long on the tour because the memory's a little bit short on the phone. So next we move on to my Abutilon megapoticum. This is simply here for decorative purposes, and if I walk on this side, I've now got it trained. Let's walk around here. I've now got it trained along the fence a little bit, so it gives a nice display, and it flowers really from April through to about November, so worth having from a decorative point of view. And the flowers are they're really quite exotic and unusual looking. Next to that, I've got my Actinidia. This is my Actinidia arguta isai. This is a kiwi berry, the small hairless one. I was hoping to have it's got a good size. I was hoping to have a lot of flowers on it this year, but I actually only had about half a dozen, which were my first ever flowers, and obviously they haven't set fruit. It is meant to be self-fertile, but the odds of getting fruit set when you've only had 6 flowers, not very high. But I am expecting, now that it's produced a handful of flowers this year, that if I prune it correctly, I should get a lot more flowers on it next year, so we'll wait and see what happens. Down here on the ground, I've got my this is a Chilean guava, Agni Molini, and this is Flambeau. This is the variegated one. Has actually got flowers on it now. See if I can get in closer on them. Has these beautiful cream bell flowers on, which open up into these little upside down cups, and theoretically I should get fruits on it this year. They're very small, the Chilean guavas, but they are edible. In front of it I've got one of my Daphnes. Can't remember the variety at the moment, though I did look it up the other day, and I will post the name on the video later when I edit it. They've got beautiful flowers with a lovely scent, and obviously they're covered in flowers at this time of the year. In fact, it actually flowers about 10 months of the year. It only stopped for a short while in February and March, and they've got a beautiful scent, so it's well worth growing this evergreen variety. Next to it is one of my Agapanthus. They're just coming into flower fairly soon. They're running quite nicely for the time of year. One of my camellias. Behind it, down there, is the one of my evergreen Daphne odoras. That should flower next year. Down here we've got a Myers lemon. This is my lemon which I've been growing outside in grounds as an experiment. Didn't do anything at all last year, didn't move whatsoever, and it went very yellow, and I thought, to be honest, the roots had rotted, but it's made a recovery and put on a load of growth already this spring, so I'm optimistic that we're going to keep this going, which is the plan. More Nerines and Agapanthus next to it. First of my 3 blueberries. I can't remember which one is which. This one's Chandler. Blueberry Chandler. And then the one at the back, as you can see, they have got plenty of fruits on them, is the variety Jersey. And this one at the front here must therefore be Darrow. And that has not so many fruits on it, but it's got a few, but they already seem to have some coloration on them actually, which is surprising. It's supposed to be early mid-season and late season, but they all seem to be fruiting at the same time. I've got my beautiful Eremurus in full flower now. That's Eremurus bungii, also known as foxtail lilies. I've got 2 plants of these. Make a beautiful display for 2 or 3 weeks. Down here in between the blueberries is my first pineapple guava. This one is Mammoth. Now, for whatever reason, this one did have its first 3 flowers last year, and I can't yet see any flower buds on it at all, but I am thinking that it will probably develop some flower buds in the next 2 or 3 weeks, as all of my other pineapple guavas have flower buds on them. Just decorative lavender here at the front. That's one of the French pink flowered ones, and here's a traditional blue flowered lavender coming into flower. Now we're going to move on to my passion flower. This is an ornamental only one. I think the variety, I've figured out, is Amethyst. It's one I originally got by mistake. I thought I was buying Incarnata, and they sold me an Incarnata plant, and it turned out to be Amethyst, but it's been putting on a fabulous display now for 3 years, so I can't really complain about it too much. Now this is my largest pineapple guava, Acaciloiana, or known as Fijo in a lot of countries. This is a non-named variety that I bought, just found a random plant on eBay. It's absolutely covered in flower buds already, which you can probably see. It's going to be completely smothered in flowers this year. Did produce fruits last year, sort of about the size of golf balls and completely round, rather than the traditional oval shape or egg shape that pineapple guavas tend to be. So I would guess it was originally a seedling variety. Down, hidden behind it now, is a persimmon, an Asian persimmon, Diospyros khaki. This is a seedling plant that was bought from Bernkoos Nurseries, not a named grafted variety. Has grown very well in ground, but may never fruit. It may turn out to be a male plant, so we shall have to wait and see. Now next to it, I'm very excited because I've been waiting 3 years for this to flower, and it's going to flower for me in the next week or two. When it does, I'll do a standalone video. This is my Caesalpinia Gillesii. If I can just manage to stand up here without falling off. It's just starting to open up the flowers at the back here. I'll try and lift this over to have a look. These flowers, when they open, are going to look absolutely amazing. I think it's called a Chinese lantern flower, the common name, but I'll just check and see if there is a common name for it. But that's Caesalpinia gillesii. And while I'm standing up here, I can properly film my the first of my pawpaws. This is a grafted variety. This is Sunflower. It's one that I've got in ground to see if it would encourage it to grow a little bit faster. Down at the back there, you can just about see, if I lean over, that's a Cardiocrinum giganteum. That's the giant lily. It takes about 4 or 5 years to get to flowering size, which it hasn't reached yet. You get a very large bulb, and then you get about an 8 to 10 foot tall flower spike. So hopefully in the next year or two we'll see something. At the front here is one of my pomegranate bushes, not a nape variety, probably not flowering size yet, although it could get a flower or two on it at this size. No idea what it's going to turn out to be if it ever produces fruit. Plenty more Agropanthus in the front. Got my bottle brush here, Callistemon. That's now getting towards the end of its flowering cycle, so once the flowers are finished I'll give it a little bit of a trim back to tidy it up so it doesn't overwhelm the border. At the back, my climbing plant, that's my Campsis, I think it's Campsis radicans, can't remember which particular variety it is. It has an orange trumpet flower on it. That's now growing actively and should be in flower in about 3 or 4 weeks time, all being well. In front of it I've got a traditional butterfly bush, that's to attract the bees. There's another pineapple guava, or Feijoa. This variety is Triumph. This one, unlike the mammoth, is covered in flower buds, plenty on there, and we've got signs of colour on the buds, which means they should be open in about another week to 10 days. I'm hoping to get fruits on this one this year because this is one of the cultivated varieties, so it should produce edible fruits. That's my in-ground unnamed seedling pawpaw. Came from Bernkoos originally, growing extremely well, looking very healthy, so I'm obviously expecting great things from that in the next 2 or 3 years. And in front of it is a Crinum Powellii. Hasn't flowered ever, but I'm looking at the size of it, might get some flowers this autumn because the flowers I think normally come out in September, October. Tucked away behind it is my seed grown tree peony that I grew myself, obviously finished flowering now, so there's not much to show on it. Going to flip over the strawberries. I've lost 2 or 3 from, I would presume, root rot, possibly because I've overwatered them, which is easy to do in pots, and they do suffer from rotting off quickly. But I've had quite a few strawberries, as you can probably see off them this year, so I'm not too bad. Had a couple of seedling potatoes that were sprouting that I threw in this grow bag. I've no idea if I'm going to get any potatoes on them, but I'm not too bothered anyway. Now, as you know, if you saw the video, I had to move around the plants last week, so I've given some of my trees more space. So the first one is my pomegranate, that's Molar Delche, probably flowering size, but I don't know if it'll produce flowers this year. Next to it I've got my first mulberry, which is the Moldovan pink. There's plenty of fruits on it, which should start to change colour in 2 or 3 weeks time. Now next to that I've got my Illinois Everbearing, which as you can see is covered in raspberries, and in fact if I can get in a little bit closer, I don't know if I can or not. You can see. As you can see, it's now starting to get fruits change colour, so we should have some edible fruits on that soon. But it's covered in fruit, so I'm interested to see if the birds go for them or not, or if I manage to get a chance to eat some. In front of that I've got one of my unnamed figs. I bought some Cypriot grow in London. Has got some figs on it, which I think will probably be main crop figs. I mean, theoretically they're brabers, but they're so slow to develop here, you could almost treat them as main crop figs. and I've got this one next to it, which is a standard brown turkey. Hasn't got any figs on it at all at the moment. Moving along, it's one of my Asian pears, Shinziki. Has one fruit on it this year. It's growing strongly, lots of side shoots, so obviously I'm optimistic that I'll get some fruiting spurs on it next year. One of my Hanafuyu persimmons here. I'm not going to go through these in great detail because the video will get far too long and I'll run out of memory. So flipping over to my tree side now. Another Asian pear at the back, which is Hong Li. That has two small pears on it, which will hopefully stay on. I've got my four, I'll get them into focus. I've got my four jujubes, that's Chinese dates at the front here. 2 Li and 2 Lang. Probably won't be able to see on here, but yeah, just about can. They're just starting to develop flower buds now, so in about 2 weeks time they'll have flowers on them. Don't know if we'll get any fruit set this year. I'm not going to talk through my persimmon collection as I've done a standalone persimmon video, but basically we've had a good move around on them and some of them have got flowers on them, so there's a chance that I might get a handful of persimmons this year. Coming down to my tomato plants, starting to get flowers appear on them. We've got a beefsteak tomato there, one in the middle's Money Maker, the one on the right is Roma, which is a plum tomato. They're all doing very well. They've only been in a couple of weeks, but they've already got flower buds on them, so if we get some warm weather they should be fine. Just my decorative little troughs that I have here for a bit of colour by the lawn. Thyme seems to be coming back after I repotted it. As you can see, I've got some ripe strawberries here, more decorative pots. Let's step over to the back here. I've got my pawpaw tree there, that is Prima. Amazingly, it has actually got, I don't know if you can see them or not. Let me try and reach forward. Has actually got a couple of embryo fruits staying on it still. Now they did have some last year and they dropped off in June, so I'm guessing they could drop off at any time because it's still an immature tree, but it's looking pretty healthy, so maybe one will hold on. There's another variety there, that's Pennsylvania Golden. Small one at the back is KSU Atwood, hidden behind the fig. This fig here that's Neapolitana Nigra. One at the front here is Goutte d'Or, which does actually have one Braber fig on it. Can't remember what that one is, a large Cyprus purple I think. Down here I've got, I think that's meant to be Panache. The one behind it is Verdone. I've moved my seedling loquats to the back there in the shade because I found out in the sun they were getting burnt. Got my 2 Akebia quinata plants, that's my chocolate vine. Didn't have any fruit set on them this year, although they had flowers because only one of them flowered and it really needs 2 of them to flowering to cross-pollinate, so I'm hoping as I'll get flowers on the second one next year that I may get some fruits on them. Got a pecan here which unfortunately has shown 0 sign of growth so far. The buds look the same as it did a month or 2 ago. And I did scratch a stem and it's still showing green, so, and I heard that pecans can branch out, can leaf out very late in their first year, but I'm not holding my breath on it, but it wasn't expensive, it was just a bit of fun to grow it, so we'll see what happens. We've got here at the front is my pomegranate, and that's Provence, that is a named one, small bush. This is another Chilean guava, Agni Molyneux, but this one is Butterball, as you can see, because it has, the new growth is bright yellow. 3 more pineapple guavas here. Amazingly, these small ones in tubs all have flowers, all have flower buds come out. It's a triumph. The one in the middle is Gemini, which has flower buds on it. and there's another mammoth at the back, and that does have flower buds on it. I've got my two loquats. This is the first one is Oliver. These are grafted on quint stocks. Second one is Mrs. Cookson. That's doing very nicely. Got my Calycanthus here, which I bought this year, which I'm very excited about. That's got flower buds on it. They should be opening in another week to 10 days, and I will do a standalone video on those because I'm really looking forward to seeing those. There's a pots growing ugly Molyneux. That's another flambeau. The only Chilean guava I haven't got, strange enough, is the plain green leafed one. Now I've got 3 more tomato plants here. I've got a sun gold. I think one is Ailsa Craig, and the other one I think is Gardener's Delight, and they all have flower buds appearing them on them now, so it shouldn't be too long before I get fruits developing. Now, almost unnotable at the back here, but very exciting for me if I can get down to it. I have Signs of Life on my passion fruit, Passiflora incarnata. Now this is the hardy one that dives back to the ground, which does produce supposedly edible fruits. Now I was reliably told by all the passion fruit experts there was no point planting one because it wouldn't survive the winter, because they need a dry winter while they're hibernating underground, and in our wet winters they always die. Well, it's got a lot of new growth showing on it, so I'm optimistic that we're going to see the plants shooting up this year, and possibly by the end of summer might even get flowers, but fingers crossed that it carries on growing. But I'm really pleased to see that it has survived the winter. So that's Passiflora incarnata. Common name is maypop. A little quick look round here as I'm doing the outside garden. Got something like 50 fig trees here, cuttings which are now a year old, that I rooted in March 2019, which I've got spare plants either for rootstocks or possibly might even sell some. Lemon scented geranium there, that's a lemon leaf one. When you crush it, it's got lemon leaves. Picked that up last week for 60p, so I thought it was worth having. My elephant's ears has survived the winter outside. I've neglected this. It's been in this pot for at least 2 or 3 years, and it really needs to be divided. So the leaves are small on it now, and it needs to be divided up and put in separate pots, which I will do in the next week or two, and see if we can get the leaves up to decent size this year. Last trough full of gladioli. Hoping to get some decent flowers on them this year. And my fine little border has got my variegated rhododendron, various agapanthus, and it's got an amarine in there which hasn't flowered for a couple of years. It's one of the larger cross with the nerine family. Agapanthus have got plenty of buds on them. We've got my 2 camellias in containers which flowered well this year. And if I just wander up here, finally my large fig, which is meant to be Rouge de Bordeaux, but I'm debating whether it is. We'll see when I get fruit on it. And this one has actually got, if I can reach up to it, one Braber, which I'm hoping is going to hold on the tree, and we see what we get. It looks too big and too long neck to be a Rouge de Bordeaux. I thought it was a smaller, rounder fig, so I'm guessing it was labelled wrong at the nursery, but we'll wait and see what happens. So that was, well, that's as quick a walk around the garden as, it's only a tiny garden, but it's still taking me, I see, 24 minutes to do a garden tour, and that's without featuring the tropicals. So thanks everybody for watching. That's a quick look around of my garden. It's only about 25 feet wide by about 35 feet long, usable space, but by putting those plants in containers I can obviously squeeze a lot more in than if they were planted in ground. I do appreciate you watching. Obviously I know not many people watch the whole video, quite understandable at this length, but I'd still appreciate a like, and if you want to share it with anyone you think's interested in growing unusual plants in the UK or anywhere else in the world, please share. Please subscribe to my channel, and of course if you hit the bell you will get future updates on my videos. Brett out for now.